Today we're going to be looking at a new piece of music that I've begun that's based in the ideas of Impressionism. The Impressionist movement started with painters like Claude Monet, and actually that term Impressionism started as a bit of a slight. Claude Monet and other artists of his time that were somewhat shunned by the classical art world were doing an art exhibition, and a reviewer called one of Claude Monet's paintings an impression of a painting. Later, that term became embraced, and now Impressionism is one of the most important movements in art history, and it still resonates today. Composers like Debussy and Ravel, and even modern composers like Toru Takemitsu, were Impressionist composers, though Debussy didn't like that term to begin with either. I think he later came to embrace it too. So let's look at this piece of music and some of the ideas behind it. I want to start by looking at the title of this piece. A gentle rain falls on a warm summer evening. The Impressionists were very interested in their connections to nature and their feelings about those connections. They were starting to take their canvases outside to paint. It was called en plein air, in the open air. And for me, this gentle rain falling on a warm summer evening brings up a lot of feelings and nostalgic feelings. I can remember as a child, we would go camping and we had this little 13-foot trailer with 4 people and a dog in it. And I can remember when it would start to rain, my dad would pull out this little awning and put it up, a cloth awning that came out from the trailer. And I'd be sitting on the picnic table that was usually there at the campsite, and the rain would start to fall, and I could hear it hitting against the aluminum trailer and on the leaves, and you could smell that smell when rain first starts to fall and hear the bugs. So it brings up a lot of feelings for me. The idea of rain has some duality to it. You know, rain is the bringer of life, but it's also got a depressive side to it. You know, don't rain on my parade, ideas like that. So I think the subject that you pick for your piece is very, very important. All right, let's look at some of the harmonic language that I'm using in this piece. Looking at these 4 measures, this piano figure is outlining the harmony. We'll start here on this G, and we're not going to worry about enharmonic spellings at this point. So here we have G, B flat, C sharp, and E. And it seems like we're outlining a G diminished 7 chord. But as we continue on, we have F sharp, A, B flat, and C sharp. So this sound has now morphed into an A dominant sound, an A13 flat 9 over G. Now as we move on, we go to this sound right here of F sharp, A, C sharp, and D. A D major 7 sound. And then we put in the 9 here and continue on. E, F sharp, A, and C sharp. So we do go to a D major 9 sound there over F sharp. Continuing on, we have an E flat to a G, to a B flat, to a D flat. So some sort of E flat 7. Then we play the E flat again, or the D sharp here, D sharp to F sharp to A to C sharp. And now we have an E flat 7 with extra tensions added, a sharp 9 and a sharp 11. And then if we continue on, this E is the flat 9. Then we go to this portion right here where we have a D major 7 on the bottom, but then we immediately move to an E major 7 and then an F sharp major 7. So if we were to analyze these chords, it does look like we're going from 5 to 1 to the sub 5 of 1 back to 1. But I don't really think it sounds like that in a strong way because we have these inversions of the chords and they change over time and kind of morph. Impressionistic music will have functional harmony in it, but when it does, it's usually softened with inversions and all sorts of tensions that don't ever give you a solid ground or a solid footing. Now let's listen to this with the full orchestra, and we'll start with a high harmonic of an A in the first violins, and that's meant to represent those bugs that we talked about that you hear in the early evening. I think that opening section conveys one of the feelings that I'm after for this piece, but it's only one of the feelings. Let's move on and look at these next two pages and what I've done here. So I'm using a scale called the Lydian augmented scale here. I'm using the B-flat Lydian augmented scale. It sounds like this. It's a very evocative scale. It might have reminded you of a scale that was used by composers like Debussy, the whole tone scale, which is very close to that scale. One of the reasons that scale works so well for this type of impressionist music is that there's no sense of home, right? This could be home, this could be home, this could be home, this could be home. There's no feeling that we've ever hit a one chord. It's amorphous. There's a lot of unstable ground here. So it's almost like we're floating. And this scale, this Lydian augmented, starts off very much like the whole tone scale. But then we get this half step here. So it's very much related to the whole tone scale. It comes from the melodic minor scale. It's the third mode of the melodic minor scale. So if we took those same notes and played them starting on G, we'd get G melodic minor. So this whole section is based on that B-flat Lydian augmented. Let's look at these lines right here. I was very fortunate recently to get to see one of Monet's Water Lilies paintings in person. Here's what a print of that looks like. It's a very large canvas, and they had just restored the painting, taking off an old varnish. So I could get up really close to it and see the brush strokes and the way he made gestures with the paint. And that's what I'm trying to do here with these lines. Also, Monet used a technique called wet on wet painting, where he would actually mix the colors directly on the canvas. And I'm trying to do the same thing in these lines. I'm trying to write directly on the score. I'm not doing any kind of sketch here. I'm just taking these colors and making gestures with them on the page. So that's where the inspiration for these lines comes from. Moving to the bottom of the page, we have a line in Violins 1 that's based in that B-flat Lydian augmented scale. Then I've voiced the first note of this run with notes from that scale, and this is an E minor 9 flat 5 chord. Then I've used constant structure or planing to harmonize the rest of the notes in this line. So here we have a C minor 9 flat 5, then an F minor 9 flat 5, all voiced in constant structure. Moving on to measure 10, we have again a voicing using the B-flat Lydian augmented scale, but now I'm doing some sort of voicing in fourths. So here we have an augmented fourth to begin, then all fourths, and at the bottom of it, another augmented fourth. Let's hear what that sounds like. Once I had this voicing, I used the same idea of constant structure or planing to finish this section. Now let's hear these two pages and listen for the gestures and the way that the colors mix on the page. The colors of the woodwinds here are very vivid, and I think that's due in part to the fact that they're playing as solo instruments. So when the flute is up in that higher register, you hear the silvery sound of the flute, or when the oboe is playing, you hear that classic color of the solo oboe. Looking at those string parts that are moving in concerted rhythm and in parallel voicings, that really gives me the sound of impressionistic music. They were very happy to break away from traditional harmony. They didn't really concern themselves with things like parallel fifths or parallel octaves. So that kind of parallel voicing that we have in the strings here really does have the sound of an impressionistic piece of music. All right, let's look at one more section here, and then we'll listen to what I have for the piece so far. Starting in bar 12, there's a melody line for a solo trumpet. And just because you're writing an atmospheric piece or an impressionistic piece doesn't mean that you can't have a melody for part of the piece or even for the whole piece. The trumpet has significance for me because that's my main instrument. As a kid on those warm summer nights camping, I would bring the trumpet along with me and practice in the trailer, probably driving everyone crazy, but you got to practice. So I hope that these ideas are useful to you and you can try some of them in your own compositions. Now let's listen to what I've done so far on A Gentle Rain Falls on a Warm Summer Evening, and I'll see you all next time.